Hello everyone, my name is Haley Forsman Womack, and this is going to be my video essay regarding my first major writing assignment. This concepts that I have chosen to discuss are sections 2.1, writing represents the world, events, ideas, and feelings, and section 3.2, writers' histories, processes, and identities vary. Now, the reason that I chose these two for my project is the fact that they intertwine very well together as concepts. Section 2.1, writing represents the world, events, ideas, and feelings, lays out a sort of reasoning for the author's choice of words and why they use those certain words. And while section 3.2, writers' histories, processes, and identities vary, explains the way life affects the way that the author writes, whether that's in the past, the present, or in the future. So this concept is one that I find particularly interesting in the way that it describes why humans have the urge to put down their own experiences into writing. People want to share their thoughts and their own experiences with others through writing, but can only communicate that in the limited knowledge of the words that that person has. Many people assume that the way that they describe an emotion or an experience will be perceived the same way by everybody else who reads it. And this concept is just here to tell you that it is plain wrong, okay? This can be a particularly frustrating concept, but I think that the textbook does a really good job at presenting why we need to adopt this concept as writers. In the book, Naming What We Know, under section 2.1 on page 38, the author states that as the author from Naming What We Know states under section 2.1 is, I may think if I write about a mountain that the mountain is there for all to see. So the words I use are not that important. But when I realize that all of my readers are likely to know of the mountain, particularly of a sunny early spring afternoon after an overnight snowstorm, ending in a sleet so the crust breaks unpredictably beneath the feet. It is though the words I write, I begin to take greater care in choosing my words. We all have the image in our head, a story we want to tell, and we want the readers to be able to see those images through our writing. But the beautiful thing about writing is that once it's completed, it's out of the author's hands. And authors should be able to acknowledge that whatever intent or message that they had when they were writing the piece could be interpreted a completely different way by the reader. It's there in the bottom line, in fine print, of what it means to be an author, is that your work is never entirely yours. I have often struggled with this concept when it comes to writing fictional works. With research and persuasive speeches, I have no trouble using the layouts and the formatting that I have been taught to in the past. However, writing a fictional piece stems from using your own imagination and storytelling. Having knowledge about this concept can help us not only as writers, but as people in our everyday lives communicating with each other. And it can help us be mindful of how our certain aspects of culture and community can be lost from one mind to the other. this opens up like a flow of communication, and in return, it improves the writer's writing as a whole, right? I've had to use this concept myself in my personal life in many different times, in many different circumstances. One of the scenarios that I've had to use this concept is in my work. I work on a critical care unit in a hospital, and as one of the tasks that I have as a patient care tech is to assess my patient's vitals and their behavior. If I were to see if a patient's skin had turned a different color, if their behavior had changed, or their breathing had began to go on a different pattern, it would be up to me to record and report that data back to my nurses and my doctors. If I were to lose this information in my report, especially not by stressing how drastic this changes in my patient, or not accurately describing the symptoms in a way that the doctors and the nurses would understand, it could end up changing my patient's life forever. In this job field, I've learned that in order to be effectively communicative with what I'm seeing and experiencing, I have to be mindful of how other people would interpret both my verbal and my written communications in my reports. For me, the second concept, section 3.2, writers' histories, processes, and identities vary, is one of the most important ones from our book, Naming What We Know. The threshold concept describes how our different experiences shape how both our identities as writers and how our personalities show through our writing. A lot goes into how a writer writes, with how they were taught, their socioeconomic status, their individual relationship with others, and what genre and form of writing and the form of media that they're putting their writing on. That's just being like a small portion of it. But the teachings and interpretations of writing has drastically changed over time. So what time period an author grew up in will tell you a lot about how their interpretation on writing will be like. So what time period an author will grow up in will vary their interpretation on writing and rhetoric in their writing. A person's socioeconomic status also affects the way that they see the world and how they approach it in their writing. With a person's race, their social class, their gender, their sexual orientation, and their religion, all creating an identity for this person, for this writer to draw from in their writing. A person's relationship with those around them also shapes their viewpoint and their perspectives on life. With writers that are being, a little bit more introverted, might be more particular on how they write about social crowds and social interactions, versus someone who is more extroverted and has a big social group to lean on, might go a little bit more in depth or might have a little bit more of a connection to what they're writing about. Genres and media will also shape how an author writes. With a writer who specializes in writing in maybe mystery novels, might be a little bit more introspective and inquisitive on life than, say, someone who specializes in romance. Not saying that romance is bad, by the way. I love me a good romance novel. The form of media that you write on also changes the way you write, with the form changing who the audience might be and who your writing reaches. Such as a blog someone posts on social media might be a little bit more informal and cutesy and fun than a research paper that an author is going to publish. There are just many different ways this concept can be used in real life scenarios, with some that I have experienced being when I interact with others on social media. We as people work with videos, images, slang, and sound to give context to our pieces of writing, and to give words like a different meaning than what they've originally were intended to mean, and use them in different scenarios as well. We see this concept being used when people use social media, such as Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. We use these social media platforms to create new slang and meanings based off of their own personal identities and experiences. I use slang and pop culture references every single day with my peers, both offline and online, and I use this as a way to socially and individually connect with these people. These references allow me to connect with my audience both as a peer and as a writer, even though it's more of a informal version of writing. These concepts were included into the book Naming What We Know for a reason, and that's because there are essential threshold concepts to adopt when honing your skills as an individual writer. Sections 2.1 and 3.2 are both concepts that focus on how the experiences of the individual are absorbed into the writing and become a sort of thumbprint for the writer that follows you wherever you go, from the moment that you start writing until the moment that you finish. Introducing these concepts into your writing will be difficult, yes, but it will also be worth the results that you will see when you do. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and have a great day.